Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuhu. Welcome to another episode of Islam for Europeans. I'm your host, Robert. Please like and subscribe to the channel. I hope you're all having a very blessed Ramadan. May Allah forgive our sins and accept the very best of our good deeds and our prayers and charity and so on. Um, so I wanted to talk about what I call the PhD convert, right? Now, what do I mean by that? Now you have to use this analogy of university students in their first year of undergrad, whether that's psychology or sociology, or something in the social sciences. You're probably going to get about 1,000 people entering into their psychology undergraduate in any kind of university. And then of those, only a handful of them will make it into graduate school, right? And then of the handful that make it into graduate school, only a smaller handful of those are going to end up completing their master's degree, right? And of that handful, you're only going to get an even smaller handful of those who go on to complete their PhD, right? So now universities, I think they know this, and I don't think that their intention is to have everyone become a PhD. It's just simply not feasible. But if you have an undergraduate in psychology or sociology, at least you know the very basics of, statistical analysis or human behavior, which hopefully, inshallah, you'll use, in your career as you move forward, right? Now, when we take a look at the archetypal convert, that born Muslims or Muslim organizations, what they think of when they think of, someone who's converted to Islam. What pops into their mind most times is the PhD convert. Now, this is a convert to Islam. Now, as an aside, I want to say that, I'm not here to denigrate the PhD convert. In fact, may Allah reward them for all the good that they do. I think that, they're people to emulate. I think that, that they've really hunkered down and, hit the ground running, and, accomplished a lot in their lives. And I think that's important. And we want to strive for the best, and, that's what Allah wants us to do. Like he wants us to, give it everything that we've got right now. At the same time, I think, many born Muslims, even converts, even when they think of someone who's converted to Islam, it's someone like that, someone who is extremely successful. Either they've, completed their a high level of Islamic education. Maybe they've become an imam. Maybe they've made hijrah to the Muslim world. Um, maybe, they've become this sort of like overnight celebrity. Maybe they have millions of subscribers on YouTube. They've married into a Muslim family. So only a thin slice of people who actually take their shahadah are ever going to reach this level, right? But, we don't, poll these people. There's no way to like analyze this unless you're going to really do a lot of exit polling for people who take their shahada. You take their phone number and email address down. You ask them how they're doing after 1 or 2 years. I mean, Muslim organizations, mosques, they don't go into this, this level of research. So the only people who are left are those who are extremely successful. It's almost like the flip side of, this idea of the they all hate us fallacy, that, the only non-Muslims that many Muslims see are the ones they see on social media or government officials or media personalities, or the anti-Islam right that their favorite YouTube da'is argue with over the internet, right? So that's a very horrible pool of non-Muslims to look at, right? So, if you didn't have any non-Muslim family members, you would think that everyone is like, everyone in the West is like David Wood or Jordan Peterson or Donald Trump and so on and so forth. But for the PhD convert, it's almost like the complete inverse. You're seeing, very successful converts, mashallah. They've done so much for the deen. They've accomplished, major things. Um, and, even for Muslims who live in the Muslim world, um, there's a selection bias. The only converts that they see are the ones who have the resources and have the pedigree and have the, motivation to make hijrah and move to the Muslim world, right? So, what's the folly in that? Like, what are the inherent problems in this line of thinking? Well, I think when we take a look at, what mosques try to do to try to help out converts, right? I think they have many times in mind that these are all going to become PhD converts, that they're looking for the cream of the crop, that they're going to attain a very high level of Islamic education, which I'm not knocking. Islamic education is absolutely essential. I'm just talking about the level that they're expecting them to reach, the amount of volunteer work that they're going to do. Um, because they're looking for the crazy successful convert, and you can't blame them to an extent because, Muslims don't have a lot to be, they're looking for something to be happy about. I mean, the Muslim world has been devastated. Anti-Islam sentiment is on the rise. So, when they see a convert, they want to feel this overwhelming sense of joy, especially when they take their shahadah, and they want that joy to continue. They don't want to have to think about, all the problems that all these converts are going to go through. Now, I said before that I considered, I was sort of a PhD convert. Not that I achieved, a high level of Islamic education, but that I was kind of this celebrity convert that would always show up in the mosque, that always volunteered, who knew everybody's names. So, it was almost like I had this kind of like instant celebrity status. And, you feed off that status, when you're a young convert, you want to, uh, have this, great sense of joy and motivation. But even for those who are celebrities, who are celebrity converts, who've achieved a lot, they still struggle. They still struggle with a lot, family-related issues, loneliness, steep learning curve, previous haram behaviors or, un-Islamic behaviors. It's very easy to slide back. And, a lot of times we put these converts on pedestals and say, this is going to be, mashallah, they're going to achieve all these great things. I mean, look what we did to Andrew Tate and Sneeko to a large extent, you know, and, we kind of turned them into these instant celebrities when they didn't really have the Islamic credentials. And on top of that, their previous lifestyle. Now, Sneeko turned out better, obviously, than Andrew did. But still, it's not like he achieved like this high level of Islamic education. And, given the fact that he has to deal with, his non-Muslim audience on a constant basis, he's just in a completely different world than people who are born into Muslim families. So, it's difficult. How do you get around this? I mean, think about the average person who takes their shahada, and I've been Muslim for 23 years. Many of these people who take their shahada, you're not going to see them at a mosque again. They may slide back and may start, have trouble quitting these un-Islamic behaviors. And, if a mosque were to take a poll on, what converts need and so on and so forth, if they take one at all, usually they just look at the converts that are successful already. They would say, we need this, that, and the other, to go from master's to PhD D level. What I'm saying is that you have all these undergraduates, and not to denigrate them, they've just stepped into Islam. They're going through a lot of turmoil with their personal life. Um, they need tutors. They need not just tutors. We need to change the whole culture and atmosphere. And if born Muslims, Islamic leadership, if they're not going to spend any time, integrating themselves into the new Muslims cultural sphere, then the next best thing is that the converts themselves, need to organize and create an Islamic niche from where they're at, right? And eventually, who knows? I mean, I would love that, every new Muslim was praying 5 times a day, and all the brothers had beards, and all the women wearing hijabs. But I just think that that's simply not feasible. But how do you get to that? If you create an environment where these, new Muslims who are struggling, like many of them are, even the celebrity converts are struggling, that helps them through this. Then you actually, build a foundation before you actually, build a house. It may mean talking to the converts' non-Muslim family members. It may mean, reaching out to them, or having some sort of helpline. It may mean having them create their own organization so they can host their own iftars. And once they're at that level and they feel comfortable with other converts, then you can, tell them, you know what, like now that you feel more comfortable, they may feel more comfortable going to a mosque. They may feel more comfortable going to, these Islamic lectures that you created. They may feel more comfortable going to an imam that's trusted, who can give them, a fatwa that suits their needs for the situation that they're living in, right? But that's not going to occur if we keep doing things the way that we do. If we keep thinking that all we need to do is just have advanced religious courses, and that's it, and that's all we need to do. It's necessary, it's necessary, but it's not sufficient, right? And this couldn't come at a more important time, really, because like if you look at the statistics, people are converting to Islam at a very high rate, even in Europe, right? But we can't keep taking all these new people in and simultaneously creating such a toxic environment, that it's going to be impossible for them to live in their non-Muslim household without being seen as a complete traitor. It's going to be impossible to, build this foundation, where they're gradually becoming better Muslims, if they don't feel confident and comfortable being in a place where, they don't, they can gradually, get rid of these un-Islamic behaviors. And even if they slide back, they feel comfortable and can confide in people, that this is where they're at and this is, where they need to get to. And I really think that, Islamic leadership, and, Islamic organizations, Dawah organizations, I'm not discrediting the work that they do. I think they're doing an absolutely wonderful job in terms of getting people to take their shahada, which, is an important step. But, more important than that is, having an environment where, these people who do take their shahada are not left out in the cold, are actually have, ways that they can address their needs and become better so that they can build themselves up. And if we look at the lifetime of the Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, and his Sahaba, his companions, may Allah be pleased with them, Islam didn't, reform them overnight. The revelation of the Quran took a period of 23 years. Um, you know, uh, there was many different rules, many different regulations, and lifestyle changes that needed to be implemented. Even the prohibition of alcohol, came down in stages. They did not start fasting during Ramadan until 2 years after the Hijrah, right? And now, um, there's no gradualization in terms of that anymore. I mean, none of the four madhabs have the same type of, like, okay, you've converted to Islam, wait 2 years until you fast Ramadan. No, I mean, you convert to Islam, you hit the ground running, right? And these four madhabs, the scholars, people of knowledge, they have much more information and knowledge than I do. But if that's the case, at least we should at least keep that in mind, that we have people who are coming into Islam, who may be coming, converting to Islam in very toxic family or work environments, that they have many dunya related issues that are not going to be solved with mosques. And if they're going to hit the ground running, and if you want them to hit the ground running, there needs to be, parallel organizations that deal with their dunya related problems, just in the way that all these different, organizations already exist in the West to help born Muslims. Like, all I need to do is go on the internet and, type in Pakistani Canadian organizations, or Syrian Canadian organizations, or Palestinian Canadian organizations. There are a plethora of these organizations that already exist that help suit the needs of born Muslims that live in different sub-communities. But they don't, Muslim leadership, they don't bat an eyelash at the fact that this exists. Why? Because they're necessary. People don't live in just one, in the West, people don't live in the same bubble, in the same, cultural sphere as they did in Medina, where everybody lived together. You have, all these different cultures, all these different groups, that live in their own sub communities. You know, just look at, we'll use two, non-white examples, because, just to take, the whole thing about race out of it. Look at, the various Chinatowns in Toronto. Muslims have been in Toronto for decades. They haven't made any inroads or any type of concerted dawah effort, to give dawah to any of the Chinatowns in Toronto, right? And because, they just don't live in those sub-communities. They may pass by them, but they don't really have any familiar relations or friend relations, with them, right? And you would think, for those who do convert to Islam, that come, that are of Chinese Canadian descent, that we would help them create their own organization, so they can reach out, to their people. And there's no political animosity that exists between Muslims in Canada and Chinese Canadians. I mean, most of these people are anti, CCP. And the second example is, First Nations in Canada. What Dawa organization in Canada or mosque has made any concerted effort to reach out to the First Nations residences to give Dawa there? And I think part of that is because most of the concentration is on trying to get people to convert to Islam and not building any kind of foundation within those people's cultural sphere. you know and if you want to think, we should just be one community, we shouldn't have different organizations or masajid that cater to one group. It should just all be one umbrella mosque. Fine, but if you're not going to reach out to these communities, and you haven't done so for decades, then how are you going to see Islam be successful as a religion or a way of life for the people who've been living here for decades and centuries? Right. So lots to chew on, lots to think about. I didn't want to make this too long-winded of a talk, but I do think it's important. I do think that, it's very easy for us to think that, the common saying that people, Muslims say is that, oh, converts are so much better than us. But, the fact of the matter is, we're struggling just as much, maybe even more so, than people who are born into Muslim families. And we face a lot of the same similar issues. You have born Muslims who, get abused because they want to wear the hijab by their own family. So I think there's a lot of overlap there, and I think there's a lot of chance for improving. I just think that given the situation, you can't just look at the people who take their shahadah and end up going to a mosque every week and become integrated members of the Muslim community, that this is the norm. Only a small percentage of people who take their shahada are going to become this successful. And even those who are this successful are still going to be struggling, with the same issues. So we need to take a communitarian approach. Converts need to collectivize for the betterment of themselves and the greater ummah at large. And, you'll see, inshallah, unbelievable success if you try something like this. You can watch a few videos, watch my video on the Yaqeen Institute study on converts. 51% of people who have converted to Islam have guided someone else to Islam, right? And, if you want that to happen, if you want more of that, we need to think outside the box and create a foundation, for these converts within their cultural sphere to help with their dunya related issues so that they can at least stay in Islam. And even if they never become practicing Muslims, inshallah, who knows, maybe one day those two converts who aren't very practicing, they get married, they have a kid, and that child could go on to become the greatest imam you've ever seen, right? Right. Just like many, born Muslims, many imams I know, their families, weren't religious at all. Right. But at least, we were able to give them that foundation so that we could grow Islam for the future. So that's my time for the day at Islam for Europeans. I'm your host, Robert. Please like and subscribe to the channel, and let me know what you think in the chat. Okay. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuhu.